Hello. Namaste. Namaskaram.
ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಕಮಾವುದಾಳಿ
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
राधे राधे.
सत श्री अकाल.
राम राम बाई.
कसं काय मंडळी? आशा কৰিছো আপুনি ভালে আছে. गणी खम्मा साहब. మెహబా. कुछ जांगपो.
कैसन बा?
అందరూ ఎలా ఉన్నారు?
ವಣಕಂ.
We invited 30 people to participate in our study.
Do we subconsciously favor those who speak like us?
Do linguistic cues influence judgment of someone's intelligence?
How does language affect perceptions of trustworthiness?
How does exposure to different languages and accents influence an individual's susceptibility to language bias?
We wanted to explore the subtle power of language biases, specifically how the perceived nativity of individuals influences their judgments and speech perception. For this purpose, we chose 30 participants through purposive and snowball sampling. These participants were grouped on the basis of the language being used by the speaker. Next, to further the purpose of the experiment, we decided our independent variable to be speaker's nativity suggestion. For each language, participants were presented with 2 audios.
Just listen to the audio carefully. This is the first audio. The speaker is a native Malayalam speaker from Kerala.
The next audio, and in this audio the speaker is a non-native Malayali speaker, so they're not from Kerala.
I think the speaker A was more understandable rather than speaker B.
Right, absolutely. I think speaker A was much more fluent and clear than speaker B.
Little did they know, it was the same audio that was being used, but only introduced differently as native and non-native. A brief neutral task was introduced between the listening sessions as a distraction, ensuring that the cognitive faculties of the participants are reduced to an objective ground post the first listening session. The participants were engaged in tasks such as word association stories, tongue twisters, and story chains. In order to understand how the mere suggestion of native, non-native status of a speaker influenced their perception, we measured 3 variables, namely fluency, credibility, and comprehension through a questionnaire.
I personally felt there was no much difference between the audio, and I felt both the audios were same.
When I first heard the first audio, we were able to understand the language and everything. We completely understood, and
I thought a native Malayalam speaker was more clear than non-native Malayalam speaker.
A comparison across the 3 languages suggests a greater preference for the native speaker. For instance, in the language group of Malayalam, 70% of the participants scored the native speaker higher than the non-native speaker. For Telugu, all the participants scored higher for the native speaker. In all 3 languages, fluency, credibility, and comprehension were scored higher for the native speaker, except in Bengali, where credibility for non-native speakers was scored higher.
Breaking news. A new study released today sheds light on the implications of language bias. What they discovered is shocking. People often make unfair judgments based solely on how someone speaks. One of the most significant findings from the study concerns linguistic profiling. Non-native speakers often face discrimination in the workplace. Through hiring practices and inclusive policies that promote empathy, bias training, and open communication, such biases can be mitigated. In the courtroom, research suggests that legal professionals often perceive defendants or witnesses with non native accents as less credible. Eliminating perceived nativity bias in courtrooms requires standardized accent neutral procedures, cultural competency training for all personnel, clear jury instructions combined with monitoring case outcomes and establishing accountability mechanisms. Studies also show how these biases affect law enforcement interactions with non native speakers, limiting justice access for immigrants and refugees. In
This study shows how language biases influence perceptions. Simply labeling a speaker as native or non-native led to significant differences in ratings of fluency, credibility, and comprehension. These unconscious biases affect social interactions and professional opportunities.